Yes, let us bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. In your name I pray, amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll, please.
Commissioner Leyland. Commissioner Lawrence.
Here.
Commissioner Locke.
Here.
Chair Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Howie.
Present.
Commissioner Barrera.
Here.
Commissioner Marquetti.
Here.
And Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Thank you. Now we have public comment, and we limit that to 3 minutes per person. And we ask that you be polite and respectful and no personal attacks, please. Now, who has a public comment? Okay.
Hey. Hi, I'm Sarah Matthews. I'm the friend of the court director and circuit probate family court administrator. I know you'll see, I think there's a proposal to add approval of our CRP contract to your agenda today, and I just wanted to publicly thank Administrator Newton for helping us get that before you today, and I also wanted to thank you for consideration of that. We did not find out until yesterday morning that we had received those contracts and that they had to be signed by the end of July 31st. Otherwise, we would have got them to you sooner. But I do greatly appreciate the teamwork that we got from Administrator Newton. He was very helpful. That relieved a lot of stress for us, and I wanted to thank him publicly, so thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other public comments? Any other public comments? All right, then, we'll move on. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, I would like to add to the agenda I move to add to the agenda the proposed amendment. I move to add to the agenda, J, 2428 Cooperative Reimbursement Program contracts under new business.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adding the Cooperative Reimbursement Program contracts to new business under J, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. All right. The approval of the agenda. Commissioner Lee.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. All right. Approval of the May 18th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Commissioner Locke.
I move to approve the May 18th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Support.
All right. We have a motion and a support to approve the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. All right, motion passes. Presentations. And we have Ben Cohen from Rose Street, and he's going to give us an overview of Public Act 152.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. As Commissioner Marquetti said, I'm Ben Cohen from Rose Street Advisors. Rose Street Advisors is the insurance agency that works with the county to work on its employee benefits programs. We've been working with the county for a little over 8 years now. So I know there's a number of new commissioners, so I thought that it would be helpful to go over one of your requirements very briefly, and that is the Michigan Public Act 152, otherwise known as hard cap, versus the 80-20 cost sharing with employees. I've got the other members of the team there as well who were not able to be here, John Schuman and Chris Wormy, but wanted to recognize them as well. So with that, if we can just go to the next slide. There we go. Okay. So just a really quick historical update on what is Michigan Public Act 152. This was passed in 2011. It requires all public employers to elect each year how to share employee premium contributions for medical and prescription drug insurance costs. Each entity must choose each year between one of two different options, really three different options. The first is called 80-20. Very simply, that is an 80-20 split of costs between employer and employee, where the employer is paying 80% of those costs and the employee is paying 20%. This is what Cass County has historically elected for at least the last 8 years that we've been working with the county. The other choice is a hard cap. This is a state mandated set amount that is set each year by the state. It sets an employee-only, two-person, and family premium coverage cost, and that cost cannot be exceeded by that public entity. These maximums go up each year, anywhere from about 1% to 4%, and any premium costs that exceed that hard cap amount must be paid by employees. Okay? The third option is a waiver. So public entities can elect to waive participation in Public Act 152. However, there are generally losses in state revenue sharing as a result of that. To at least the clients I've worked with, none have actually chosen that waiver. So they choose either the 80-20 or the hard cap themselves. There's pros and cons to each. With the 80-20, the pros primarily are there's historical precedent here within Cass County that result in lower county cost. It is a budgeted expense because it has been utilized for the last several years. And it is generally less expensive for employees depending on which plan. So particularly for the richer plans with lower deductibles, an 80-20 cost sharing tends to result in lower costs for employees, as well as oftentimes a lower cost for the employer. The hard cap, the nice pro about that is that it's a known increase each year. You know about March of the previous year what the increase will be for the following year. So if it's 1.3% as it was in 2023, or if it's 4.1% as it is in 2024, from a budgetary perspective, you know what that budgetary number is, and it's easier to plan for that looking at your future year. The cons, currently, in the past several years and for this current year, it is more expensive for the county to utilize the hard cap by about $170,000-ish depending on the enrollment and the plans, et cetera. And some plans would end up being more expensive for employees. Some plans end up being less expensive for employees. But by and large, it is an expense to the county to, in essence, set yourself up so that you have a known budgetary expense each year with that hard cap. Okay, so that's really just a quick overview of what Public Act 152 is. Each year, again, you have to make a choice on which direction the county will go. Administrator Newton has already given you the recommendation for what he and the administration believe the county should do. My job is simply to tell you what those options are. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Yes.
I wanted to ask you, Ben, what is the hard cap this year? I think I might have missed that.
Well, I didn't put it in there because it varies by employee-only, two-person, and family coverage.
Okay.
So employee-only coverage is around $9,000 a year, and family coverage is around $22,000, $23,000 a year. And dual is somewhere in between there.
Okay.
So it's a very strange dollar amount. It's not an even flat dollar amount because of the way it goes up each year since 2011.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions for Ben? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay, we're going to move to committee reports. Okay, we'll skip Commissioner Leyland and we'll go right to Commissioner Lawrence.
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Locke.
Just in Penn Township, they had a fundraiser on June 3rd at the park there for the fire department. And they raised $6,500 towards that, and they had like at least 250 people that came through. It was a very good turnout. They had lots of donations from people and businesses where they gave away frisbees and footballs. And had a raffle for some of the pickleball paddles, and so it was a good turnout.
Thank you. Okay, we have Commissioner Jones.
I'm saving mine for the district reports.
Okay. Commissioner Howie?
I did attend the reunification picnic
Good.
the other day. It was really nice. I learned a lot and how great the program is.
Yeah.
Helped a lot of people, and people that are working there actually went through the program themselves. So they're the experts and they know. So I was very impressed with that. So I'm glad I went.
Thank you. Commissioner Bure?
No committee report.
Okay. Commissioner Lee?
We had all our township, I had all my township meetings last night, so that's nice, makes it fresh and easy to come to this. So, Mason Township last night, they passed an agreement to pay for, just for their fire department, they're gonna pay for a new set of tools such as, like the Jaws of Life, and it's gonna cost about $57,000, is that what it was,
Yep.
57.5? Porter Township is working on getting their septic facility up to date. They're having some issues with that, with some higher costs. And then Calvin Township had a few people come in as far as interest with reduction in property values due to, it sounds like with border issue, like with pot being grown next to the lakes from counties north of them. So they had several people come, well, they had a few people come in and talk about that as an issue. It was interesting just to hear how they discussed it. That's all that I have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have, our other committee reports?
I have a district report.
Okay.
Yeah. So everybody knows this really isn't a district, it's really all of our district reports. We have a pin that we give out for special events or things to recognize people. But everybody knows that I've done 25 years in the military, and this right here really hasn't any significance because it sits here. We've got some in there, got some in there. Anybody can come and grab one, you know. And so when I get an award in the military, if they just give them out, and all the military people in here know that that lessens and it cheapens the value of that. So to give you all an example, when I was in Afghanistan, I was stationed at Camp Leatherneck. And if that tells you anything, I'm an Army guy on a Marine base, you know, and we get coins. Those challenge coins are huge. Army guy don't get a coin from Marine. It doesn't happen. So I represented our battalion of 600 people at this Marine base with a bunch of Marines, bunch of Armies. The Secretary of the Army was there, and this Marine general was there. He's like, Sergeant Jones, you've been standing here. He's got coins, Marine coins. He's jingling them. You've been sitting next to me all day. Let's see how smart you are. Get one of these coins. This never happened on my watch. Yes, sir. You know, I'm nervous as all get out. So tell me, what's the capital of New Orleans? How do you say it? Nolans or New Orleans? Nolans. He's like, nah, stupid, Baton Rouge. You know, I'm like, come on. You know, so I didn't get a coin. So to fix that for our county, I made a challenge for the county to come up with an idea. So not to get away from our seal, one side of the coin is going to be this, and the other side I put out to the community, and we had a bunch of nominations, a bunch of applications and things for me to decide. And there's some drama behind that, but you can't do a good thing without a little bit of drama. You know, as if it was easy, then everybody would do it. So the person that won is here tonight, and her name is Paige Lindback. She graduated from Edwardsburg in 2010, so she's a county resident. Went to Southwestern Michigan College, and then she went to Ferris State. That girl's like smarter than me. You know, I want you to take my place. So I'm gonna recognize her now, but when I make these coins, I'm going to give her the first one. So if you could come up and get a picture with us, that'd be great, and everybody can see who you are and how you won. Congratulations. Good job. Would you like to say anything while you have the floor, ma'am?
You don't.
We've embarrassed you enough, haven't we? All right. Well, thank you. And I look forward to giving you the first coin, and I'm only gonna make 50 of them, so they're gonna be valuable. You know, it's gonna be one of 50, because after I get them made, I'm gonna patent them so nobody else can have them. That's all I have, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I have a report, and also, of course, many of you have mentioned already, you know that the mural is complete. So that's been pretty exciting, and we've heard all kinds of really great positive comments, and that's Edwardsburg onto a township. I was at the Mason meeting, and yes, they did get that new tool, and that was a pretty big deal for SEPSA. But on June 3rd, I attended a special meeting of the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission, and we approved the audit. And then on June 8th, the Policy Committee met, and of course, you'll see our recommendations. I attended Connexus on June 9th, and the 22 million plus budget was passed. Now, just some backgrounds. Connexus is one of 14 workforce development organizations in the state. And they're not just workforce, they have other subsidiaries. And we are involved with one of the subsidiaries, and that is a Market Van Buren. And we pay Market Van Buren to help us with economic development. The employment situation was discussed at that meeting. 32% of their workforce has been there 1 year or less. So they've had quite a bit of turnover. And FYI, I thought this was pretty interesting. Corewell Health, which is Lakeland, they have over 400 vacancies. Yeah. Human Services Coordinating Council met June 14th, and Judge Carol Beeler and Kelly James Juror gave a presentation on a probate court. It was super interesting, and I learned a few things about probate and wills. Also, Chuck Rose of DHHS gave further information about the Medicaid determinations packets that are being sent out. And this is during COVID, and for a couple years afterwards, they were very lenient about Medicaid, but now they're taking a look at the Medicaid recipients, and they have to fill out some information, and it's very possible that they will not receive the same type of Medicaid or amount of Medicaid that they had in the past. They may not receive it, period. They've sent out in Cass County over 1,000, and not that many have been returned. So if you know somebody on Medicaid, and if they and check with them to see if they got that packet and to get it back to DHS right away. Anybody else, anything to add to our reports?
Milton Township did have a special hearing last week regarding a gas station that's gonna be going into the physical address of 33331 US 12. However, that was tabled, so there's more to come on that. That will be later
okay.
on.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, now we're up to the administrator's report.
Yes, my report is in the packet. I'll touch on just a couple things. I know Commissioner Lehman normally gives updates on the historical courthouse, but I will touch on that now. We had our event on May 25th and gave everybody a chance to walk through and see the space with the demo work that was completed and get an idea of kind of what the plans are going forward. That was fairly well attended. We have, I think, a little over 100 guests. I think everybody, enjoyed getting to see the progress in the building and envisioning what's coming. We are still working through the USDA office for the CDS grant. We did receive word that the tribal review is completed. It's moving on now to kind of the local offices doing their final review, and then that'll go up to the national office for final approval. So we're in the home stretch now to get that finalized. We're hoping, if everything goes to plan, construction should commence mid-July. We had a kickoff meeting with DCS Technology for our broadband project. We got everybody kind of in the room together to work on how we're going to coordinate that. So with GIS, Chris from DCS, obviously our finance department and myself, and looking at kind of the marketing and notice requirements we're going to get for people. When they're going to be out doing field work, obviously we want to make sure people are aware of it.
Yeah.
Because if people see strange trucks driving around or somebody getting out of their car and walking around the neighborhood, we want them to know that, hey, no, they're there for a reason. So we're making sure we have that all in place. And I think those are the two main ones. Happy to answer any questions anyone else may have.
Anyone have any questions for Matt? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the finance report. Jennifer Renfro.
The finance report's in the packet, just, the numbers do look a little bit off. Some budget adjustments were passed on 6/1, they went through the Cal mid-May. But they're not technically in the system until 6/1, that's the way it was posted, so the end of May just still looks like some of the retirement costs, some of the percentages just look a little bit higher. some budget adjustments, so those will level out a little bit more.
Thank you. All right. Veterans report. Carrie, where? Oh, there she is. Down here. I knew you were. I just didn't see you. Excuse me.
Good evening, everybody. For our contacts with our veterans in the month of May, we had 221 through the office. The good news is we've made up our deficit from a couple months ago, where veterans have moved out of the county, and we actually went above that. So from April to May, we had an increase of $85,837.43 for a total of $2,896,638.92 for a total of 2 years. So I think that's pretty cool. Our Soldiers Relief Board, they approved a widow's chimney to be fixed where it was falling apart, and LaGrange Township picked up that bill for us. So that was amazing. Soldiers Relief also approved, and we used grant money, we kind of moved some stuff around, for a roof and a stove for a peacetime veteran. The roof is being worked on as we speak. The stove is already there. Soldiers Relief also approved for a peacetime veteran a furnace that is completed. CDBG, a basement was leaking for a widow. It is now fully repaired. They also approved for a furnace and a well for another veteran. We're doing great things in the office with a lot of help. The VA event that we had at the VFW a couple weeks back, it went really well. The VA was very happy when they left. We are already working on the next event for next year. We're hoping to have bigger and better. We're also hoping to do an actual stand down instead of what we just did. With your permission, I'd like to do a couple kudos out. The first one I'd like to do is to thank Gary Gravitt and his spouse. Gary sits on our Soldiers Relief Board. He went around to Menards, Lowe's, and Home Depot and got us the best deal on the stove. He was also there the day it got delivered.
Oh, wow.
Because I did not realize they will not hook up a gas stove. So you had to have somebody, and thank goodness, that was Gary's field. While he was there that day, it was a week or so ago when it was in the 90 degrees. He put in their window air conditioners. They had been without their window air conditioners all that time in that heat.
And Gary's a Vietnam vet himself
Yes.
with severe disabilities, and he still goes above and beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did all of this on his own time. I wanted to thank him for his help. He's changing lives as, he was doing that. Also, a couple more. I wanted to thank the Treasurer's Office, Hope Anderson and Tracy Haskins. Hope was working with an individual, found out that they were a vet in need of this well and furnace, completed the application, and then sent them to me. Instead of saying, go see Carrie, she can help you out. She went above and beyond at that point. I know we all have additional duties, but, I thought it was really cool that she did that. Tracy works very diligently, excuse me, on the My Hope and the CDBG applications, knowing that some of those people are our veterans. And she still does all the work. And then she'll actually bring them down, hey, Carrie, this is a vet, but I've already done this. I think that's amazing. I wanted to thank them both. They're making a big difference in our community. And my very last one goes out to Commissioner Jones for directing a widow to our office so that we could help her with her furnace needs. She had no furnace all winter. You helped increase her quality of life and made a big difference for her. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
As I said in the office, and I'm kind of like the person in the office, but it's taking all of these people in the community to bring all these people together to get these things done. I think it's amazing what we're doing. And of course, Matt is in CDBG.
you know, the apps are coming through. Jenna's always looking at our budgets, making sure I'm kind of on track. So thank you also. So does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Cory? Thank you, Cory.
Thank you.
That's a great report. Okay, county partners, do we have any county partners?
They probably don't know who I am, I've been so long.
You were the snowman 4 months ago.
I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Bob Thompson, in charge of dust. Yeah, I'm the guy. Thank you for giving the time to give you a brief update. It's been too long, but we've been a little busy. I think it wasn't too long ago that I told you about the record number of asphalt tonnage we did last year, and I assured you that we wouldn't see that again for, I hoped, the rest of my tenure. I was wrong. Somehow, the townships are printing money, and they are deciding to use a lot of it on roads, and we're very grateful for that. So our tonnage for asphalt is above last year. And the biggest surprise to all of us is that we have doubled our tonnage for gravel projects. We have put that out there to all of our township partners every year, and we get some response. And for whatever reason, this year is the year of gravel projects in the county, and it's wonderful because there are so many roads that desperately need that gravel. We put 3 inches on it, and it just makes a completely different road out of it in terms of how long it lasts between gradings and so on. So we're very grateful for that. We are well ahead of schedule on the projects for asphalt and gravel. And I couldn't be happier about that because I really was worried about getting it all done. At the end of this month, we should be 45% complete on both of those, which is just amazing to me. So our group is rising to the challenge and stepping up and doing what it takes to get the job done. I want to talk about dust control. It's not that funny if you answer the phone at the road commission. Fortunately, it rained and the phone slowed down a little bit, but I want to give you a little background on why things happen the way they do. We use a 42% calcium chloride product for dust control. 13 of the 15 townships participate with us. The other 2 do it on their own and use a different product. The product that we use has the longest lasting of any of the products available, and so that allows us to only apply it one time. That cuts down tremendously on our grading costs, and so that's why we choose that product. The downside is this: you cannot use that product until the low temperatures for the days are above 40 degrees. If you look at the history of the low temps, even though we had a very high temperature week, the low temperatures for the days before and after that week were still in the 40s. And so that prevents us from using the product when we'd really like to. It crystallizes, it gets like a snow cone, and it's ineffective, and we can't use it. The other challenge that we've faced, as all of you know, it's been a little dry. Fortunately, again, we got a couple rains and helped us tremendously. But you can't grade gravel roads effectively when they're that dry. You just stir the dust. And so we need moisture to do the prep work for the dust control, and that held us up. And then also, like I said, if we were to apply that product, even if it was warm enough, under those dry conditions, we would lose that product in a few days. The first couple days would go, wow, you know, that's great, it's done. And a few days after that, people would be very upset because the product is not effective anymore, and we've spent we'll spend about $400,000 on dust control. And that's a big number, and I'm not going to make a decision that jeopardizes the value of that money and the effectiveness. So we're gonna wait, whether we want to or not, we have to wait and make sure it'll work. That's the story on dust control. Most people don't realize those circumstances that we have to work within, and that's why I wanted to bring you up to date on that. We use, as I said, calcium chloride. If you paid attention, and I'm sure you have, about Eagle and their I don't know what to call it, thoughts on prohibiting the use of some of these products for ice control and dust control. Calcium chloride is one, mineral well brine is another, sodium chloride, which is salt, is another. We use calcium chloride because it is the least damaging to plant life. It in both winter, and not that there's a lot of plant life in winter, but it carries over on the edges of our roads in our right-of-ways, and so that becomes important in the spring and summer. We don't want to use sodium chloride, even though it's a straight salt product and you can eat it. It's much more damaging to plant life, and it has other negative effects. Mineral well brine is way less effective, very much less expensive. Townships that use that for dust control will do at least 2 and sometimes 3 applications because it doesn't last very long. They have to grade in between each one of those. That's more expensive than the product itself. So that gives you an idea of why we do what we do. I wanted to bring you up to date on the roundabout. Construction on the first phase, which is what we call the 3 legs, will begin July 10th. That's right around the corner. Northern Construction got the bid, and we're glad that they did. It came in about 3.7% above the estimates, which was like nothing, because in that letting that MDOT had on June 2nd, there were bids submitted that came in above 30% of estimate. And those projects have to be rebid anything over 10%. And they're likely not to be done in the time frame people hoped. That's a lot of money. But we were very fortunate. It's a local contractor. We work with them a lot. They wanted this job, and their bid reflected that. They left $400,000 on the table to the second bid. We'll take that. I do want to follow the previous speaker in acknowledging what I think we need to do more often, and that is the continuing cooperation that we enjoy between the various departments. The relationship continues to just get greater and stronger and better with your maintenance people, Dave in particular and his folks. It's wonderful. Quite some time ago, I told you about replacing the air conditioning units for our building, and we were fortunate to have Dave come into that position about the time we needed the installation done, and the savings with his involvement was more than significant. And that lets us do other things that we couldn't have done if we just spent the money on that particular project. And it works very well, and he's tweaked other parts of our system, and it works better than it ever has since it was new, I'm told. And so those things have to be recognized, folks, because you made a decision to fill that position, and you need to hear the benefits of that decision. I'm glad to share it. We share similar things, or we have similar things with our parks and Scott. It's wonderful. The sheriff has been very cooperative. It's not getting easier out there in our work zones. It scares me all day, every day, because people just won't slow down. And they're just accidents waiting to happen, and I just pray that they don't happen here. But we get good cooperation from them. Makes a difference. So I want to acknowledge that, and I appreciate you giving me the time to bring you up to date. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other county partners that are going to? Mr. Bundle.
If I may.
You certainly may.
Before you do, if I could interrupt, we gave Bob Thompson a break because he wasn't here since I've been chair. Since it's been wintertime, we got 5 minutes.
I don't need it.
We
I don't need that long.
gave
Mr.
him a
Chair.
break.
First, I have to acknowledge how that's an extremely tough act to follow. Thank you for that, putting me on the spot like that. You all are probably very sick of seeing me, but so this will be a very quick update. I had indicated in previous updates that we would be seeking some support from the county commissioners in the interim, and you had some asks of us in that we did everything we could to shore things up. So we're working very hard to stabilize our business and to maintain our current level of service. I'd like to introduce, for those of you who haven't met, the person who really makes things go, Julie Hartman, our operations manager. Please stand, Julie.
Ah, got her.
Let people see you. Again, we're working very hard to stabilize the business and maintain our level of service. We thought before that we would be really in need of support, some outside financial support by July, but thanks to her diligent efforts and those of our staff, we've been able to push that back where we think the time frame is more like October. You also asked that we take additional measures and let you know what measures we were taking to shore things up. So we have, again, we've raised our contract rates to make them more aligned with our cost of service. All of our contract partners have agreed to the new rates in principle. One of our key partners, the Veterans Affairs Office, we already have the signed agreement for the next fiscal year. The rest are agreed in principle. Again, aligning our rates with our cost to serve. Ultimately, though, we want to point out that with Bob, we're common. We're part of the infrastructure is one thing we have in common. Also, the being tied at the hip with the Michigan Department of Transportation. But business is one thing. The real thing we're talking about here is people. There's about 3,200 people of our population here that we service. About 6% of the population of the county. Split between men and women. Interesting thing, though. The big proportion of those people are in District 5, and because we have an institution there that kind of skews that amount. But our big demographics that we serve, the top demographic is seniors, people over 60. Sure. After that, it's middle-aged people, and then adults 20 to 39. And so those people need our help. These are the most vulnerable people in our community. And we talk about people's abilities. Over 12% of the people we serve have some kind of mobility issue, and it makes it real tough for them. You think about a van a handy van might cost $50,000. So how many people in our community can afford to do that on an individual basis? So it's one of those things. It's an opportunity that we can come together to take care of our neighbors. Which I think is critical. So we appreciate your continued support. As you already know, our board has agreed to go forward with putting a millage proposal on the ballot. We thank our county clerk for her support and our equalization office for their support in getting that organized. So we'll be going for that in February. So we hope to give you a more formal presentation in very, very near future meetings. Let me just give you one example in closing of what happens when we're not there to serve, and what would happen if our public transit was to go away. We have a contract partner who we were unable to serve because of funding. We're talking about a veteran situation here. And because of their funding situation, rather than our being able to pick up this vet, take them to Battle Creek for their treatment, the VA had to come here, pick him up, take him back to Battle Creek for the visit, bring him back here, and then go back to Battle Creek. So if you imagine if it was an equal-sized vehicle, twice the cost great level of inefficiency. And that's true of any situation in which, you know, we could probably serve, but a partner has to take over in our stead. We're the most efficient, best use of dollars. That situation, we're paying for it anyway because it's just federal dollars that are going toward it rather than the local dollars that are supporting our community. So that is also a plug for Veterans Affairs. Thank you for your support for them, our key partners so far, and we urge you to continue to support them so that we can continue to partner to serve our veterans. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other county partners? Anybody else? Okay, so then we will move on to our elected officials. Are there any elected officials that would like to come up to the microphone? Oh, good.
Good. How many minutes do I get?
You're the sheriff.
Okay. I don't have many. I just want to talk about something that we've started last year and continued in this year with our Marine Division, and that's vessel checks. So sometimes we would do these vessel checks by stopping boats on the water and checking to make sure they have a fire extinguisher, they have enough flotation devices for the people they have on the boat, and they have a throwable flotation device as well. And but sometimes it's better just to get that in the front end. So last year, for the first time, we did on Magician Lake, we did a vessel inspection. We had, I think it was 60-some boats come in and get checked out, and they get a sticker that we get from the state of Michigan, actually from the Michigan Sheriff's Association, that it's put on that boat. And then our officers know that that boat has been checked. So we've done 2 vessel checks so far this year, one at Diamond Lake and one at Long and Coverdale Lake down in Union. And we've checked 69 boats, 7 failed, actually 69 boats passed and 7 have failed. And, but they're now aware of what they gotta do to pass those inspections. So then they get that sticker put on their boat, so the Marine officers know and the DNR officers know that they've had that inspection. So we're continuing to do that. We have 4 more scheduled, another one on Diamond, and 2 on Magician, and 1 on Indian Lake. Unfortunately, we can't hit all the lakes because it's just, there's too many lakes. We have anywhere from 120 to 140 lakes, depending on who you talk to in Cass County.
Yeah.
But we try to patrol 40 of those lakes on a pretty continuous basis. So it's just something we're continuing to try to be on the front end and making sure people are safely operating the vessels and everything. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because we've got our new boat and everybody's kind of like enamored with the boat, and it's hopefully we don't have to take it to its full functionality. I think I've also talked about, but I'll just remind you, in October, the entire region, which is a 9-county area, is going to do a practice dive in Indian Lake in October where they're going to simulate a plane crash in the lake. Then they're going to go retrieve the parts for that plane and everything using the materials. So 9 different counties will be coming here for that exercise. So I'll get you dates and times when that's happening so you might want to come out and check it out. Right.
I just
Thank
have
you.
a quick question. Do you know?
There's no questions during this.
Time!
Saturday, you have plans to attend a Lake Association meeting?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'll be there.
Just checking.
Thanks for the reminder, but it's on my calendar.
Thank you.
Yep. But not at a lake, but it's not at a lake.
No,
But
it's not.
at a lake. so.
Anybody have any questions for the sheriff? Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
And no unfinished business, and any other elected officials? Excuse me, Monica? No? Any other elected officials? Okay, thank you. Unfinished business, we have one, new business, and what we'll do is A, which is the reappointments. Can I get a motion to move those to the regular meeting?
I'll move that we bring those to the regular meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
The appointments committee, we went through all of them, and I talked to everybody here. There's one questionable, but by then I'll know, by our regular meeting I'll know, and we've got a backup plan just in case, so I feel confident we can move it forward.
Good, I'm happy to hear that,
Yeah.
thank you. Any other discussion? All right, so we have a motion to move appointments to the regular meeting. Any further discussion? I already asked that. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yay?
Aye.
Okay.
Good
Opposed,
enough.
say nay. We gotta mix it up a
We
little
got it,
bit.
we got it,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, the next thing we have is policy revisions. We have the paycheck, parking, county building, maintenance supervisor, MERS, deferred compensation, restroom claims, and fraternization. Do I have a motion to move all of these to the regular meeting?
I move to move all policy revisions to our regular meeting.
Support.
All right, so we have a motion and a support. Is there any discussion on the motion? Are there any questions on any one of these? No? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, thank you. All right, now we have Resolution, Public Act 152, which is deciding, actually, we've already decided, right? We're gonna go with 80/20? Yes? Okay, so do I have a recommendation to move the resolution of Public Act 152?
So
to the-
moved.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to move Public Act 152 resolution to the regular meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Silver Creek Police Services Contract. Do we have a motion to move the Silver Creek Police Services Contract to the regular meeting?
I move that we move it to the regular meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mary seconds. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. Fiscal year '24 budget.
Okay. Give us a moment here and we will pass it out. It is hot off the presses.
Oh, God, I like it hot.
Thank you.
Good.
So as it's getting passed out, there's a couple things I'll touch on, is that we do not anticipate a deep dive into this today at all. I mean, obviously, everybody needs to have a chance to digest it. This is generally about 4 to 5 weeks earlier than we normally would be talking about this with all of you. Part of that is correlated to the motion back in January in terms of exploring a balanced budget option. So with that in mind, and just to kind of clarify that essentially a budget where we're not contemplating the use of fund balance dollars. So with that in mind, we felt that it was really important to bring a budget, a preliminary budget at the very least, to the board as soon as we could. I would note that there are some, revisions and things. We're still waiting on a few things. So for example, with county partners, those are essentially set as the same level as the prior year. We think there will probably be some adjustments there. The only thing I think we adjusted was we proposed a slight increase with the conservation district from 5 to 10. I think the parks grant and broadband grant from MEC are not contemplated here in this budget yet either. And we were also going to note that ETO balances are a little higher right now in terms of the budget than what they probably will ultimately be. But as we get into the summer, we're assuming we'll probably see vacations and some of those things kind of take place, so those will probably fall down. I'll start, I guess, with the charts. So we have a chart here. The top is general fund revenues, breakdown for the preliminary budget. So it's essentially for all of the revenues we have recorded, where do those come from? So you can see with us, 63% of our revenues that are forecasted come from property taxes. The next portion would be 15% come from state funding, 8% from grant funding, 8% from fees, services, and permits, and then our transfers, local contributions would be 3%, and then interest and rents, transfers, and reimbursements comprise 1% respectively. Now, in terms of expenditures, I think it's really important as we start looking at what path we may have to go forward with this. We look at primarily what are the categories for our expenditures. So you can look and see with the way the pie chart is set up here, wages account for 43% of the overall general fund expenditures. Employee benefits, so kind of in that same category with wages and benefits, account for 24%. So when you look at our cost for wages and benefits as a whole, that amounts to about 67% of the overall budget. transfers would amount to about 6%, and those could include things, for example, like moving money to public improvement funds, things like that. And then other would be supplies, utilities, things along those lines account for 27%. So the one single sheet here is a breakdown, a very high-level view of the general fund. And you'll see kind of across the top, we would have activity from 21 through 22, the amended budget for 22 through 23, activity from 22 through 23 so far, and then the final two columns would be our department requested budget. So the one thing I want to note in both of these, so we have a little bit more detail of a budget that kind of focuses things a little bit more. The department requested budgets, these are not budgets that the administration has made any adjustments to. We haven't made any changes other than inputting projected wages and salaries and benefits. This is all going to be numbers that were driven by our department heads and elected officials. With the general fund in particular, last year I believe we had a forecasted deficit of about 1.8 million. That was going to be, obviously, fund balance would be utilized in that case. As we look to 23 to 24, with everything that we have right now, the fund balance allocation would be approximately $3.4 million. And then we do a 2-year budget with this, so if you look through 24 through 25, that would be approximately $4 million. When you look at our budget this year having a fund balance allocation right now of 1.9, and when you look at our existing fund balance of just a hair over 9 million, you start to realize that as we are right now on the same trajectory, we'd be looking at very close to spending a good portion of that fund balance over the next 2 years. And so I think the decision to look at what do we do going forward, and how do we as a group try to figure out what the best path is to kind of look at how we can coordinate with, I guess in terms of trying to identify, are there areas where we can look to save in the budget? Are there other areas where we might be able to drive revenues? I think it's important we have those discussions early. And then obviously on the part of the board, wanting to look at a budget option that doesn't contemplate fund balance, getting some direction from the board in particular, how we'd like to approach this. Do we want to look at setting up meetings with individual departments and elected offices to go through kind of their budgets a little more in detail with them directly and have some conversations in depth about that? And there's probably a number of different ways that you could look to kind of touch on this, but we wanted to at least get your thoughts on what direction you'd like us to head from here.
Mm-hmm. So,
Did I miss anything?
well, we're gonna have questions. Don't we have to do the motion second, then the discussion?
We can do that.
Because I got questions.
Do we have a motion to move FY '24 budget?
Although
Do we need that?
It does not, no, it does not.
Does
have
not
to.
need that.
But the other thing I guess I would note
Okay.
too is that, with this, there are certainly gonna be some avenues with elected offices and departments to revisit these and figure out, are there any adjustments we need to make, are there any other ways? And so this is really just presented as a very preliminary, option. We wanted just to get that out there well ahead of time, but I wouldn't even consider it necessarily a draft budget. It's really just our first draft essentially, and then we'll be working to kind of hone that in over the next month or so.
Just a second.
Yeah.
So do you plan to take questions now, or?
We certainly can. I mean,
Okay.
I think, what we were hoping was to at least, and of course, like we have, there's a lot here, and we
There
understand
is.
we're not gonna be able to kind of go through everything all at once, but just a rough overview if we could of, are there any, directions in terms of how you guys might want to look at exploring, that option of looking at kind of reducing fund balance allocations? I believe the last time we went through some of these processes, it was kind of setting up, maybe a day and having different departments and elected officials come in and working through those specifically. I didn't know if that might be preferred by the board, or if it might be something where setting up a committee might be preferable also. I mean, there's probably a number of different ways, but be up to you guys to determine what would be in your best interest.
Commissioner Jones?
Well, we have to talk about this before we move it to the general, to the business meeting, because that's the reason we have the cow. So we gotta have questions, and we gotta talk about it. That way everybody's clear, so when we do vote on it, there's not questions after the vote, which
Sure.
we've seen before.
Sure.
So, not a question, but it's for the board and the elected officials here. I made that workshop, and I don't think if we put this on our workshop, it would dominate the entire workshop. So we might as well not have that. We can have this separate, that's what I would suggest,
We do.
from when we
Yeah.
vote on it.
Yeah, we
So
do. We do.
I'm in charge of that workshop, so I'm not putting this on that agenda.
No, we
But
do.
I think everybody's in consensus with that. I'm not being dictator or whatever.
No.
So-
But the question is, how do we do that?
Yeah, that would be
are we
how,
gonna- yeah.
I would go with what Matt said. After everybody digests it, then we schedule a time for everybody to meet for a special thing dedicated to just this alone. Because this is huge. We went from, 2 million more?
Yeah, roughly. I mean, it was, yeah, with the amended budget, we're looking at 1.998 for this year, and
Yeah.
we're looking at 3.4. So, yeah, I mean, it's not quite double, but
So my question for discussion would be, is this an administrative or an administration department driven event? Did administration come up with this, or is this a collaborative from everybody, and you all are just reporting what we received to the administrative office?
yeah, so we're just kind of reporting. I mean, so essentially, I mean, obviously administration has our own, budgets that we would have input here as well too, but there's a process that goes into it. We meet with all of our department heads and elected officials. And then in terms of revenues and expenditures, those get forecasted by each department and elected office, save for wages and benefits. We double check those and verify those, and those get put in. And we have a breakdown of those by position too that we can share.
So this isn't just the administrative office
No.
alone?
Right.
That's my point.
No, and
That's my point.
none of the numbers here are anything where we've had any adjustments or any changes.
Yeah.
So you have met with every department,
Yes, we
every
have.
elected official,
And this-
everybody.
So my point is, this came from everybody, and not
Everybody.
just one office, to
Right.
keep the drama down. My second comment or question, last budget, when we were 1.4, everybody thought it was the end of the world, but it was said that we had this magic pot of money off to the side that we could take from and make everything all right. Could you all tell us about that and how we can't use that money to fix this?
Yeah, so, on the more detailed budget that breaks it down by wages, benefits, and other, on page 9, you can kind of see, from 22 to 23, there's a section at the bottom, beginning unassigned fund balance, it's just a little over 9 million, 9,018,784. If we take into account what we're projecting right now for the fund balance allocation that will come from this year, that would leave an unassigned fund balance of 7,020,000.
Mm-hmm.
As you move into 23 and 24, now again, I think there will be some things that can be modified and changed, right off the bat, but probably not to the tune of 3.4 million. We'll have to work through that with everybody to figure out how we get closer, but if that stayed the same, so that's kind of the point here is, you would move from 7 million in that fund balance down to 3.59. And then assuming, the 2024-2025 budget remained fairly similar to what this is as well, you'd be looking at running into a fund balance deficit. I mean, you wouldn't have fund balance to cover it as of 24 and 25. There is a budget stabilization fund that has about 570,000 in there, so I mean, you don't.
Still not enough.
You'd end up at the end of, not the following year, with $100,000 in available funds. The only other amount is there is a reserve amount for cash flow purposes that we have to maintain. That is actually, as recommended by our auditors, and if we didn't have that, we would get to before tax collection, so usually around the end of the year, we get to July, that time frame. We need to be able to have that because our tax collections don't really pick up until September. We wouldn't be able to make payrolls, we wouldn't be able to pay bills because we wouldn't have enough money in the bank for it.
So we don't have any money that anybody can say that we can just magically take this and fix it. That's my point.
No, I mean,
All right, thank you.
fund
And-
balance allocation is something where it can provide that gap for a short time, but, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're relying on that entirely, and we talked about this, I think, back at the workshop too, that, that only goes so far. And,
That's just bad management.
we have to
Yeah.
start looking at how do we maybe start to control some of those costs a little bit, and what avenues do we have to either, I mean, the other flip side is looking at driving revenues, but when you see property taxes are generally the biggest pot, there's really not a lot we can necessarily do in terms of driving, property tax revenues either.
All right, I've got one more. I'm trying to head off future drama if nobody's picking up what I'm putting down. So my next thing is, not we, but Commissioner Leyland proposed this early. Like months ago. We got a lot of kickback from that and a lot of drama. So what would have happened if we had waited to the normal time frame that we normally do it in? Would we be able to recover or have a plan and have enough time for Jen to crunch some numbers to try to, so right now we have time to work and do things and not go into a crisis mode where we need AEDs throughout this building. But say if we had waited to do this, what would have happened?
Well, I can tell you, we normally would have introduced this, towards the end of July or early August. Usually we have about a meeting, maybe two, to get it approved from the time the draft gets introduced or the proposed to the resolution to adopt it. If we had come with this and if there was any concern or the board of commissioners said, well, no, we gotta make some big changes, we wouldn't have had a lot of time to be able to make those changes. And we have to have a budget that gets passed by September 30th for October 1st. If a local government doesn't pass a budget by that time, operations essentially cease, so you end up with essentially a shutdown. So, I think that's the one advantage, there are several, but one of the big advantages to looking at this early is that we've got we've got the benefit right now of having some additional time to really work through this and figure out how do we approach this as a county, and how do we want to kind of look to the future and plan ahead and come up with something as a final product that everybody can stand behind.
Thank you, Matt. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Does anyone else have any questions for Matt regarding this, regarding any kind of a time frame, et cetera? I think we need to get on this just as
Carol.
soon as possible.
Carol?
I mean, are we allowed to ask questions?
Yeah.
Or, no?
This is committee of the whole, yes.
Yeah, no, okay. I was just checking. I'm all in favor of talking about this, the sooner the better. I guess what I just want to say, and I haven't been here as long as Sheriff or some other people, but, I mean, starting this discussion in June is not the earliest we've ever discussed it. In fact, a lot of times we used to start these discussions like in February or March, so and I'm not saying that like to be argumentative, I'm just saying like, it wasn't the issue of having the balanced budget that for me was the issue. It was to dig in, to find out, to get direction from the board as early as we could about the areas they wanted us to consider cutting. Because if you look at the pie chart, the biggest amount of money is spent on wages and benefits. So when we had meetings, and I think it was maybe 10 years ago, I'm not sure on the exact time frame, where we were looking at a budget where we didn't dip into fund balance. We held meetings, but we were given direction of, well, basically, what we want you to come to the meeting with is a presentation on X percentage or something, so that then we could have discussions about that, because we're all not situated the same. And I'm not gonna speak for Monica, I'll let her speak for her, but for example, the number of people in her area versus the number of people in the courts, if she lost, for example, 3 positions, well, she can't carry out her statutory duties because, so if there was just, for example, if the board said, well, we want everybody to cut 3 positions, that's not going to really work well because of the fact that we have duties to carry out. There's pros and cons of every avenue, but I guess what I would just say is that this isn't the first time this has happened, and I would let others with more experience weigh in on this, but where it's really helpful, at least for me as an elected, is to know from the board what it is they're looking at, because when we talk about balancing,
there's a multitude of things. There's our union positions that we have contracts with, there's bumping rights, and then there's our non-union people. So if the thought is, well, we were gonna cut X number of positions or a percentage or whatever, those are the kinds of things we need to know what the board's thoughts are sooner rather than later, so that then we could go over all of our, numbers and figure out what is gonna be satisfying to the board, because otherwise it creates a lot of stress and, I don't know what, but anyway, and it was really helpful at least 10 years or so ago when we did it with one of the prior administrators, where we had meetings where we could come and basically answer questions and talk about the direction of each of our areas, and to have the hard discussion of, well, if we had to cut X number of positions, this is what it would look like. Okay, so.
No, that's 3 times you've said cut positions, so I'm gonna stop right there and say, I've been told here in the last couple months to stay in my lane, because I don't know what you all do as elected officials. I don't know how to do your jobs. If I did, maybe I would be in there, but I'm not. So, please.
Yeah.
So, me personally, not speaking for the other 7 commissioners, cutting employees is not even on my mind. You said that 3 times, and that's gonna stir up some things right there, so I hope, please.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not
What I'd like to
interrupting.
know, instead of us telling you all how to run your positions, Jeremiah Jones, Commissioner, would like to know, what do you all want us to do? Because you know better than we do how to run your offices, so we can't tell you how to do it without you all telling us.
Well, right,
That way it's not on us.
I understand
We're
it's-
the ones that's gonna be,
I understand it's a dialogue, and I'm only saying cut positions because I can't come up with enough money to make our budget balanced, quote unquote, with paper clips, paper, and
Yeah,
anything
I get
else.
it.
So there's no way to do it. I'm not doing that to stir up trouble or to make the employees feel bad. I'm saying it because if you look at those pie charts that Jen and Matt put together, which are nice,
well, that's the truth. They didn't put that together. That's
Oh.
what it is.
I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying, like, we all know the biggest percentage of our money is spent on people. And so when you say, oh, come to you with a proposal, like, I don't even know what that would look like. When we had to do COVID furloughs, we basically had meetings with administration and discussed what we could do on a temporary basis and, went back and forth. But I mean, that was because it was for a short term. We, had to figure out how we're going to run our operations. So those discussions will look different for every area. So I'm not sure, when you say make a proposal, for example, I'm not sure.
Well, I'm just trying
You
to
know.
keep it from, because we can decide as a board, that's our job. But we would like input from those affected departments before we say, this is what's gonna happen. So I'm just gonna put it out there. It's the commissioner's fault that these people had to do this and this is what's happening. It's not just us, it's everybody. We're working as a team.
And I'm not trying to say that. I'm not trying to stand up in here and say, like, I'm trying to look for a scapegoat. I'm trying to say, we need clear direction about when you say make a proposal for what? I mean, right now, some of our areas generate revenue, some of them generate no revenue. So if we're looking solely in our silos, there's some areas of government that produce no revenue, so there's no way to balance that. You know what I'm saying? Other areas are good money makers, and I don't mean money makers like we're making a profit, but I mean they generate revenue, so you can offset your revenue with expenses. We're not all the same in terms of what we can do, so.
Just trying to head off drama,
I'm
that's
just,
all.
because we have some newer commissioners, I just wanted to say, we have done some of these exercises before, and so maybe there could be some benefit of, knowing some of the past things that were done and then having creative ideas about what to do in the future, but,
Well,
I'm not
Jeremiah
complaining
Jones
about
and-
what they've done so far, I'm just saying.
We're not looking to cut any positions.
Okay,
That's
great.
not what we're saying here. Absolutely not.
Okay,
For the
great.
record, for those that are listening on YouTube,
And me, Judge Beeler, I'm not saying we should cut positions. I'm just saying the reality is, there's no way we can come up with $3,429,210 without looking at that aspect, so. I don't know. The sheriff has been here a long time too, so, way longer than me.
If I may?
Sure.
I'm not the
It's
chair.
Committee of the whole. Yep, it's committee of the whole, so.
yeah.
you can follow.
So traditionally in the budget process, so I've been involved in the budget process for 20 years. And usually we would now have a report of okay, have there been any increases in requests for people? Have there been any increases for capital expenditures? I don't know if this is part of this budget or not. I'm not privy to the whole thing. I've just got it. So these would be kind of the next level of things of, are there any asks out there for extras? And that's what you got to start looking at, is those asks can be done. So start to pare that down a little bit with a meeting with administration or with a committee or whatever to see. I can tell you, I haven't asked for anything extra as far as people, but because I've got a bunch of vacant positions anyway, so I've got to fill those positions, but that's just, I don't know what else everybody else has done. So that's kind of the next level, is there anything above and beyond being asked for that's been included in this? And then we start balancing that out. And then we start just having those conversations. And we had nice conversations with Matt and Jen. They came in and listened to us about our needs and wants. And so it's just a matter of, now that we know that number, to have those meetings again, I think. So I think that's just what we need to really put the pencil to the paper. So kind of, everybody has their what they feel like they would see their organization doing. And now it's a matter of seeing what we can afford to do. So, and that just is the next wave that I've been through in the process over the years. So, don't want to cut people, obviously. We don't want to, we just want to make sure that we're doing the best for serving the citizens of the county. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, Jen.
Just really quickly, since Sheriff brought it up, I thought it was important to say there's been a request for one change in a position, which was our bench warrant officer, I believe it was. So it would be removing one and changing that for a different one, so that's still one position. And then there was a request for two part-time positions to be added under animal control to relieve them. They're not getting, Ron could speak a little bit, or maybe Sheriff, but they're not getting the inmate help that they used to with cleaning, and it's really wearing down the short staff that animal control has now. So that is about the only big changes that I've seen in staffing for requests, and those were added as they were requested. So those two part-times are included in those numbers, as well as the change in the
one
position for, yeah.
But what do you see as, I mean, I'm shocked, truthfully. So what do you see as, give us some ideas, I guess. What do we see? How can we have to pare this down. There's just no two ways about it.
I would agree, we do need to find some ways of spending. There's a lot of different ways to look at this. There are some areas we budget on a worst case scenario. I'm gonna use one that just kind of comes to mind real quickly. Institutional care for children, it is our responsibility to take care of these children. If we have to institutionalize them, those costs get very high. I believe Carol puts in about $200,000 into the budget. Historically, we haven't seen that, but it can happen very, very quickly. So maybe we could lower that in the budget, not just try to, but then if something substantial more than, normal comes up and she's like, we've got this big case, they're gonna be in a while, we need a budget adjustment, but that stuff can still happen. So I wanna say that Carol's kind of budgeting, just being very careful because that can happen very quickly and it gets very costly. So there's some of that. Our wages, we redid union contracts. There are promised wage increases for a little bit. So you're looking at 5 to 6% increases for employees, as well as contributions to the DC have like a tiered thing, so that they're going up 1%, so that's contributing. Employee costs are expensive, they are anywhere you go. We do try and offer some great rich benefits. Unfortunately, sometimes we hear that employees coming in just care about that base salary, and they don't care about some of those benefits. They care about paying for their children's daycare, and very understandable, right? They're not so focused on retirement, where other people are very focused on retirement, have been here for a very long time. So it's hard to make sure that we're hitting both, and with the public sector, even me coming here knowing that I can go somewhere and get a great salary, but some of the benefit packages in which you're looking at are much richer than you get out of the public. So it's
That's
really
true.
looking at what we're offering, being careful when we're doing budget adjustments, being careful how we're spending money. I really think it's gonna take a team of us to get together as a team and really work through this. Anybody who has ideas for bringing in revenues, I came up with something yesterday and I threw it at Matt, and we'll be bringing that to you, and I'm super excited about that maybe we can get some more revenues in here too. We do have to be careful how we're spending. People might think, oh, I had this vacancy this year, let's buy this, this, and this. Why are we doing that? We really should be sticking to what was forecasted. Me and Matt talked about the way a budget is presented. Everybody just kind of assumes the Board of Commissioners passes it as a department level, so we can move things around within their lines. But if we're really, when we're passing budgets and expecting that money to go to people and there's a vacancy, why are budget adjustments being moved so they can buy extra equipment or different things too? So maybe looking at passing it so any budget adjustments going in the future from salaries needs to go through the Board of Commissioners. We're really expecting that money to be part of that, and maybe that would kind of help on some of this extra spending because we have it. Everybody likes to get new fancy things, but sometimes we just can't afford it. And if we're really considering, this is for our employees, for every one of them, to try and keep our wonderful staff that we have, that maybe people will be a little careful with spending. I don't have all the answers how to get back from the $3.5 million. We do have to find some cuts somewhere, and
Definitely.
it will continue to rise as salaries are promised to increase, as well as this retirement over the next year or two.
So, moving this to the main meeting,
July 6th.
July 6th.
I don't think we need to do
No.
that.
We don't need to do
No.
that. That's not what
No.
we're doing.
No.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, there's a couple of things we need to kind of, I guess, work through is, I mean, if we want to explore with that 3.4 million, how do we get that down to zero? That's, I guess, part of that equation and part of that motion.
We're back to 1.4 maybe.
Let's do that. I mean, I think the other very real question is that, it was kind of shown to be a balanced budget option in terms of the motion. Is there any guidance from the commissioners in terms of looking at the next couple of years to say, hey, we acknowledge that we need to start moving the needle in the right direction, but maybe we don't feel that, we're able to do that right now. We need to do a little bit more looking at where revenue, are there areas to drive revenues? Can we kind of start to, look at expenditures in a little different way? I mean, I think you highlighted it really well. I mean, there are certain areas where we try to budget for those worst case sort of scenarios. Maybe we actually budget a lower amount for those, with the understanding that when that happens, we're gonna have to come to the Board of Commissioners and say, hey, we're gonna need an adjustment. That would be a little changing things in that regard, is like getting used to seeing that, instead of, 5 or 6 budget adjustments a year, there might be 20.
That's what I would like
So
to
it's
see
more
instead
about
of us
trying to
making
get
a decision
closer to where we
final.
think we would be. It's just a
Yes.
different way of thinking about
Yes.
it. That's one way. The other thing to keep in mind is those vacancies are there. So that's difficult to forecast. If there was a vacant position now, we would have budgeted for it. But of course, we're not gonna be paying a position that doesn't have, somebody doing that job. So while it's budgeted to make sure we have that there, that's a good question too, is when do we anticipate that position being filled? Or with some of those positions that are vacant now, I mean, maybe a good question for those offices or departments is, what is the actual level of staffing that we truly need? Do we need that one position or 2 positions, or if it's been vacant for a while, could we make do without it? I mean, maybe the answer is no, but those are the kinds of questions I think we can work through to figure out what does that look like.
Those are what, me and Roseanne are the only ones that talk. And are any of our new commissioners, you all have any?
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
When does this get finalized?
That's a good one.
Yeah, generally speaking, the budget would normally be approved 1 of 2 times. It would not, with the committee of the whole structure, that changes things a little bit. Special meetings have been done, I think, in the past too, but the main key point is it needs to be passed prior to September 30th. What we've done in the past was usually shooting for that first meeting in September
Yeah.
with the idea that if there was some
yeah.
final thing, we'd have time to be able to schedule a special meeting, or back then, and we had the 2 business meetings, we could have done, you know, a revision and followed back up with that second meeting.
Our fiscal year is October 1st to September 30th, so.
Yeah.
Because I just don't want them to walk away from here with still questions.
Exactly.
Last year, was it August when we
Yeah.
had the budget presentation last year?
Yes.
End of August.
Yep,
it was.
Yeah.
Beginning of September.
I remember it well.
I do want to say there's a lot of work that goes into budgeting for salaries. If any departments, elected heads want to know what a person costs, it's not just their salary. And so there's a lot to those benefits, as you saw on the graph. I have those numbers readily available if anybody requests those. If there is a question you have, you know, tomorrow morning, anyone shoot me an email or call me or text me, please feel free to do. I figured this was going, for lack of a better word, going to be a sticker shock for everyone. It certainly was when, you know, we were dwindling down. I have this every year when I get it, but, so I understand, but if something pops up and you need any clarification at all, I'm always around.
So we need a workshop
You do,
to do between now and
yeah.
I mean, there should be a structure, but I think
a few of them.
time is gonna be of the essence.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, the one time that sticks out is, you know, that last week in June, we wouldn't have, you know, a Board of Commissioners meeting at that point, so that'd be the week of the 26th. I know we're leading into the holiday there, but if people were around sometime that week, you know, there could be some options there.
Talking about June?
Yep.
Yeah.
So not next week, but the week after.
Or
And-
can we, I think this is more important than our actual workshop, maybe, and we could even delay that and replace it with this. You know,
That could be done, I mean.
because we already have that scheduled.
It's already scheduled.
It's already scheduled, we already have a time frame.
Yeah.
And we can replace, because this is more important than anything we got to do in what we had for our topics.
Yeah, big
And we can
time. It
start immediately,
Yeah.
you know, I would suggest that. Yes,
Can I just
ma'am.
ask a question? Only because, and again, I'm not trying to be adversarial, but when we had met before in prior years where we kind of have a back and forth, a lot of us, at least for me, and I can't speak for anybody else, I would have to bring some people with me for my different areas, because like with some of my different funds, I don't know every single line item by heart or anything, so if we could, I understand that you wanna prioritize it, and I'm willing to move hearings and stuff to make that happen, but because I would need to bring other people, if we were gonna do it at a particular time, I need a little bit of notice, so that I could make sure.
Well,
you
that
know,
won't
to
be the
get-
only one that
Yeah,
we
it sounds
do.
like we probably have
No,
more than
but
one,
I'm
right?
saying.
We're gonna have more than one, because you
So
all
I
have
know.
schedules.
No,
Hope
what
and
I'm not
Monica
trying to
does,
say
the
you
sheriff,
don't, but I'm
yeah.
just saying, like, we need a little notice to get together, because also we need to be able to study what these numbers are and think of proposals that we could make and have our people, you know, put together.
So are you suggesting that we don't have it on with our workshop, replace it
I
with
was
our
just thinking that
workshop?
maybe sometime in early July, so we could get all of our stuff together and know what the expectation was from the Board of Commissioners of what you wanna see, because there's a lot of us, and we'll probably all have to
Well-
have only a limited amount of time slot.
That,
Yeah.
what we wanna see is different from what is gonna actually be done, not what we wanna see. We need what you all suggest that we do, not what we wanna see.
Starting a conversation.
Yeah,
Well, and
yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm saying the words wrong, I'm just saying to
Yes.
know the parameters of what we're going to be discussing, because we've done it different ways. Like, we've had discussions down at the granular level of going line item by line item. We've had discussions at a more of a higher level of going area by area, and depending on what the discussion is determines how long it will take, what the intensity of information is
This
we have
is,
to bring,
this
et
is
cetera.
affecting everybody's livelihoods in our county, so I'm here for the duration. I'll be here till midnight if it takes that long.
Okay, and
It's
I'm
that
willing
important to me.
I'm willing to be here anytime too, but, you know, like I do have to, if I have to reschedule court, for example, get notices out and stuff, so I'm just asking that we would have a little bit of lead time to be able to plan
So
for
like
it.
the first one where we might get together and discuss it, might be a discussion on what we want to ask them.
That would be good.
You know, so
Yeah.
then we can give them that information.
And give you the time to, yeah, that what you
Maybe
mean?
decide on how many meetings we need to have between
Yeah,
then
Yeah.
and the end of the fiscal year.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Joyce, did that,
Oh, no,
yeah, okay. Because that, we could do that at the workshop as a group
yeah.
and discuss that, you know, with Jen and Matt
Right,
and any other elected officials or departments that might have theirs ready by then, just to give us an idea. And then we can give other people that needs more time to discuss or to gather stuff.
Matt, how many items do we have on the workshop agenda?
We got about
13 or 14?
about 8 or 9 on there.
Yeah, and so in other words, I mean, and they're all important, but what would you say we could probably move to a different time, another day, and replace those with the conversation such as Jeremiah is alluding to?
That's a good question. I'll have to-
Yeah, I've put a whole bunch of them out there. I think all of them can be put aside for this.
Well,
Well, maybe, I mean, we can only do so much
Because
first.
this will
Because
cover,
we're gonna need to know
Yeah.
what
yeah,
we wanna
there's
ask
other
them
information we're gonna
and
need.
Yeah.
see details, and
Yeah.
then maybe you could add another, something on our list to it, and
because the list that I put out to all the commissioners, having that discussion about the budget would cover
Some of
about half of
some of
them.
them, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, I think some of these things could probably be combined. I mean, we're looking at the cow and its function,
mhm.
VOC committees, VOC reports, chair and vice chair duties and responsibilities.
Get rid of
We
those.
want to talk about grant processes and timelines. I think the elected officials, we're going to talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit also.
Yep.
Special meetings. This is a simple one, I guess, but like VOC silence when questions are still present. The entire timeline and process for the old courthouse, VOC member statutory duties, relationships between VOC and elected officials and the general public. We had the ad hoc executive committee, which that's actually been carried out now, so I don't
And
know.
That list that he's doing right there is different from the one that we had at our brown bag, so he's just going off of what
Yeah,
my list that I
was
gave
going
out.
off of that list
Yeah,
originally,
so
yeah.
that, for the people in the audience, that isn't the one that's set in stone. That's,
And there's still some.
that's
other
just my
things,
initial
so-
one that I threw out there for a place marker.
So, well, why don't you two take a look at it?
Yes, ma'am.
And see what we compare and replace it with the discussion.
I'm gonna do that
like
tomorrow morning.
How
You
we,
can do
well, how we
Yeah.
need to,
So
How we need
budget
to-
discussion at the 22nd. budget
Yes.
workshop.
Yes.
yes.
Or at the workshop.
And then meanwhile, if any of us, the commissioners,
I mean,
can have any questions
Yeah.
or say, hey, maybe we could, or suggestions on, you know, how you wanna bring some of this about, just get a hold of
Yeah, get hold of, because we're gonna set the
Matt.
agenda, so
Jeremiah.
give it to me and Matt, and it'll get put on the agenda, or the questions, that way everything is answered, that way.
Or like if there's more, some other information that you might want
Mhm.
there that has to do with the budget, you know.
And I extend that also to the departments also. You know, it's just
Yeah.
not us.
Yeah.
You know, the departments, I encourage them to send us what they have and what they need and what they think, because like Judge Beeler said, the sheriff has been here longer than anybody here, except for maybe Roseanne.
no, he's been,
Do you have any,
he's been here longer than
you know,
I think too, one
That
thing,
would be
and
awesome.
maybe this is the workshop, and maybe this is where this can happen.
Mhm.
You know, I think at some point, you know, a discussion from the board, kind of giving myself and finance director and the elected officials, you know, kind of a directive from the board as to here's what we
Yeah.
need. You know, we talked about a balanced
Yeah.
budget option, we can still work through that, but the question really is gonna be, you know, what is the actual expectation? So are we working down to find a budget where we're using no fund balance, or is it, hey, you know, we don't wanna see an increase more than 2% from last year, or
I
something along
think,
the.
yeah, I think that's.
Where does that fall?
I think
you
that's
know?
where we all be, I think that's where that meeting's gonna begin,
Yeah,
for us
I
to
mean,
figure out.
Because that plays a big difference, you know,
It
and I
does.
think how you might approach that would be different. If somebody is looking at it and saying, okay, well, here's what, you know, as a percentage, right? I mean, roughly overall, when you look at the general fund, it's about a 14% difference between revenues and expenditures. And of course, we talked about how that isn't necessarily consistent across each department, because the number of staff, the actual budget for each department is gonna be a little bit different. It might be easier to find, like, you know, savings in one department versus another. Well, if we know kind of what the Board of Commissioners is comfortable with, we can work with our departments and elected offices to make sure we're trying to get into where everybody's comfortable.
Okay. Okay.
If I can jump in just real quickly.
Sure.
If anybody would like a detailed budget, I did not print them, trying to save on some cost. I'm more than willing to email them out. If you would like a printed version, if you're just better with paper, let me know and I can get that. But it's about 108, I got yours already, I knew you would. It's 108 pages long, so it didn't make sense to print a whole bunch of them. Without that, and then not to kick everybody while they're down, but I did want Monica to speak a little bit about elections and the changes.
It's a nice intro.
I'm sorry.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's not good.
Gosh, no, it's not.
So in my budget meeting, I shared with Matt and Jen what Proposal 2 is gonna bring, and financially, it's
Sure.
gonna be devastating. So I did not request any budgetary items because we don't know what we're looking at this point. The Secretary of State gave us preliminary numbers, and they're going to the state asking for funding. So we're gonna wait and see what the state will allocate for us. The numbers for 2024 are gonna be much higher, but they will be recurring, so every even year, and every 4 years,
Every
we'll
4
have
years.
3 elections we have to fund.
Sure.
So they told us to expect next year at least $20,000 per precinct to implement everything. It is a complete overhaul of our election system. I don't think people realize how expensive absentee voting is.
Oh, sure it is.
And 9 days of in-person voting is just, it's pricey. So we have 21 precincts. So we're looking at close to $500,000 just for little old Cass County. And we have 3 countywide elections next year. We have a presidential primary in February. We're gonna have a primary at some point. Right now, what's slated for August, we're trying to get it moved up just because of all the new requirements so that our clerks don't totally lose their minds. We're trying to get it pushed up until possibly June. And then definitely the November presidential election. So I'm gonna wait, and I will definitely come back to the board once I know numbers, but that's something you can't say no to.
No.
We have to fund elections.
And then we don't know. It's an unknown.
It's in law.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna need more money, I just don't know how much.
Thank you for the update. Okay, can we move on?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay. So we have budget amendments F, and we can move those forward to,
Yep.
do we have a recommendation to move those forward? Yes? Okay. It's a Spark grant, resolution of support for the parks. Do we have a resolution, or can we move that forward? Do we have a recommendation to move that forward?
Would you like to,
Here.
Scott, give you a little
Okay.
intro on it?
Yes.
I have like 45 minutes, I'll make it quick.
We're gonna need the sheriff here in about 5 minutes, 1 second.
Thank you for the time.
All right.
Let me just throw a couple things out here. Michigan chapter of Dark Sky International, Great Start Collaborative, Michigan Dark Skies, U of M chapter, Ohio Northern University, Director of the Penn Harris Madison Planetarium, Executive Director of Scenic Michigan, Senator Jonathan Lindsay, Director of Engagement for Dark Sky International, Conservation District. Those are just a few of the organizations and names that have already written support letters for this particular Spark
You
grant
need one for
proposal. You're gonna support it in the form of a resolution. So thank you very much.
But I'd be happy to write
Too
something.
easy.
Yeah, very, very easy.
I'd be
So,
happy to write
and that's
that.
just a few of the support letters. I still probably have a half a dozen more coming. A couple years ago, prior to our master plan, 5-year rec plan that we were required to have on file with the DNR, we put out a survey, and almost 400 people responded, and from what I'm being told, that was an exceptional amount. Of the top 4 things that people most desired improvements at Dr. Lawless Park, number 2 was an observatory, number 3 was connect to a rail trail. If you remember, you supported a resolution for the village of Vandalia to begin a rail trail, and number 3 was a nature center. So these aren't just Scott Wyman's, wants and needs, and it's not just the Parks and Recreation Board. These are citizens from Cass County. As far as amenities are concerned, the number 2 amenity out of 26 that were mentioned were updated restrooms. That was number 2 out of all of them. So it just so happens that this Spark grant has to do with updating a set of restrooms, it has to do with an observatory, and it has to do with the construction of a nature center. So we're looking at about $1.2 million, $998,000 of that will come from the Spark grant, and the other $200,000 will come from the Charles Bombardi bequest. And then that'll leave us another approximately $27,000 of Bombardi money that we can use to add the amenities to the nature center. We're gonna need tables and chairs and projectors and all the cool things to keep all our displays in. So I think it's a positive project. Like I've said before, it's going to be highly, highly competitive. I'm projecting 400 to 500 applications, and probably 23 to 25 will get chosen. Again, like you've heard me say, we have 2 things going for us. We're an international dark sky park. I mean, these are, the people that I just mentioned are top-notch people in the international dark sky world. So we've getting a lot of support, and then also we have that donation from the Bombardi family, from Charles Bombardi, which should make a difference. So I'm very hopeful. I'm always optimistic, and I'm hoping to have your support in the form of a resolution sometime prior to the 26th of June, because that's
the deadline, right?
That's the deadline, yeah.
So what we were looking at was, I know we had the workshop for the 22nd, we were thinking it might be easiest to do just a quick meeting, a quick special meeting, maybe.
Sure.
Just
That's
that
a-
item
yeah, that's a
before
good
that, just to
idea.
make sure we get it all set.
Thanks. Thanks.
Is Marcy doing this?
You know what? Marcy helps us in whatever we do. Yeah, she's, top notch, yeah. South, you talk about partners, they're, not much bigger than Southwest Michigan Plan. Yeah, okay.
We're good.
Am I getting the hook? Am I getting the hook? Does anybody have any
Don't get
questions?
kicked off the island.
Anybody have any questions?
No, sir.
questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so then we have this next resolution, step level increases, I don't know what you want to do about that, in light of,
In light of the budget, it makes things.
it makes things different,
You want
yeah,
me to give a quick overview of
Yeah.
what this would do?
yeah.
Well, they can go to the BD, but it don't mean it's gonna pass, but don't waste their time with it, Because I didn't know about this budget when I looked at the step level increase, and now my mind has changed.
It's difficult to look at that without even having our first discussion about the budget.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That
So-
makes sense.
yeah.
nope.
So,
Can
Karen,
I ask a question about that, though? On the resolution, I understand that I'm not, trying to advocate for you to put it forward if you're not comfortable with it, but what we're asking for is not permission to give increases, we're asking for a process to be established.
Oh, that's
So
right.
that could be something because that's what that resolution is. It doesn't approve anybody getting a raise. It approves a process to be established where we can approach, we being elected officials, Matt, and request somebody to be increased. Maybe we won't request anybody to be increased in light of what the budget is at. I have no idea, I can only speak for myself, but again, we've been asking for at least, and Victor's not here, but since last summer, to know definitively what the process is to do something such as this, and it has been done. It was done last summer. So, while I understand and I totally respect whatever you decide, I just hope we're not gonna continue to defer letting us know what the process is. I understand that we could have a process and I could take a request to Matt and he says no, but then the employees know, the process was X, we did it, and the answer was no. So, thank you so much for.
I would say we don't vote on this till after we have our first workshop anyway. It'll give us more time to discuss it,
Yeah.
so.
And the one thing I would note too is with the resolution, it does specify that in the request that would come to administration, it would give detail as to why the action was being requested. And it would have to detail the budgetary impact too. I mean, so if we're thinking about the budget and what that potential impact would be as we get into the next fiscal year, I mean, it would still hold true in that you'd have to be able to articulate that the budget would be able to support what you're recommending. I mean, if that next budget wouldn't, then this obviously would still,
Yeah.
the process would be in place, but you still wouldn't be able to then request it,
Yeah.
so.
Because,
That's true.
so can we just still move it? But I'm afraid of that, because then that will, the answer, I'm not, but you just brought it up. The answer is no, then now we're back in the same position. You know, it's your fault that we're not, never mind the $3.4 million.
Yeah.
But you said, you know, so I'm uncomfortable with that altogether, because I'm trying to avoid drama.
We still need a process.
Right.
We still need a process.
We gotta have a process, these people have gotta know how that they can increase the wages of their employees when they do well. Because our employees have gotta be recognized for their term of service and in doing well.
So was the consensus of the board that we move it forward?
I think it would be good to move this forward because it is a procedure that's going to be used and there's going to be variables with it. Matt's still going to have to approve it, but I don't see why we shouldn't move this forward.
Did that resolution have a date on there as to when we were,
Yeah,
it was
it's
like a
only
trial,
good
right?
through December.
Yeah, December.
It's
There's
only
an
good through
ending
December.
part of it.
I'll move it forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think just for an additional clarity, I think the idea was, from the policy committee at least, I think part of the idea was to look at this as kind of a potential stopgap solution and explore through the policy committee and the wage and salary administration policy, is there something in there that should be changed, or we could have a broader policy change that would impact this, maybe tie some of this to performance evaluations and looking at step increases and kind of looking at the whole picture. So I mean, I think this is not a bad
So we can see everything.
initial response to try to find a happy medium right now, and then a longer term solution can come.
I say we move it forward.
Okay.
Okay, so we're in agreement, we're gonna move this forward? All right. I is the master plan commitment agreements with the participating entities. Do you want to move that forward?
Kind of have to.
All right, yes, hopefully,
Yes.
yes. And then the cooperative reimbursement, cooperative reimbursement program contracts for Title IV-D funding. And Sarah talked about that tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do we move, should we move, everybody
Yeah.
willing to move that forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Recommending? Okay. All right, so now we're down to board member comments and announcements. Do we have any board member comments and announcements?
I've talked too much.
I just want to say one thing, just for any electeds or department heads out there, if anybody wants to meet with me, I'm more than willing to meet via Teams, calls, or we can schedule a meeting. I'm not great at texting, so just avoid that.
Shoo.
But,
I can
I'll
attest
be
to that.
flexible, because I know this is kind of something that, I only know what I know, and so I would be, open to hearing conversation on this.
Thank you.
Any other board member comments?
Well, I agree with Sam. If anybody needs to bend my ear, you're welcome to email me. We'll set up a time where you can, and maybe Sam and I both can come in together at some point in time and meet with you folks.
Anybody else? I just have one quick comment, and that is that for a workshop, even though we are gonna talk about the budget, we still gotta eat. So, we're working on doing the potluck, and I wanna thank those who have already signed up to bring a dish for the potluck. And so far, we have quite a few that have signed
Some
up.
of us just don't know what we're gonna bring.
Well, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
I'm bringing an appetizer.
What? Yeah, there is a sign-up sheet, there's a sign-up sheet, I'm gonna thank Jen
Hopefully I
for,
impress everybody.
yeah, I wanna thank Jen for, helping me with the sign-up sheet, and, so and that should be a nice spot for, it'll be enjoyable. So, anyway, now, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Support.
Okay, we're adjourned. I got it, oh, I got it.